The ancient Egyptians are known for their many gods, be that in human form, animal form, or even ambiguous. Yet in modern times, the public perception is that all ancient Egyptians, royal and common, worshipped one animal in particular, the domestic cat. Known as the goddess Bastet. But was this actually the reality? I am searching for the facts on cat worship in ancient Egypt. From the tombs,
dogs were given names where cats were not,
and scattered treasures all around the world. And I explore an ancient forgotten city high up in the Nile Delta dedicated to the cat, Bubastis. There is only one known scene of a pharaoh worshipping Bastet, a city that was written about by many ancient historians as a feminine stronghold, and even mentioned in the Bible as a site where Jesus once lived. I hear firsthand from my friend and cat mummy expert, Salima Ikram, what was really going on with cat priests.
I know you are a big cat lover, especially of the mummified variety.
Dead cats at best.
Did the pharaohs really worship the cat? Why are there so many cat mummies being discovered? And why was the city of the cat torn to the ground? Come with me, Curtis Ryan Woodside, in my search for the ancient cat goddess.
You're a cat.
Okay.
And
Now,
you are meow.
In the modern world, there seems to be this huge craze for all things related to cats. People spend hours watching viral cat videos, and of course, they are the second most popular pets to have after the dog. And it's this modern craze that has led to some interesting untruths about the cat in ancient Egypt. I start my feline journey up north in the Nile Delta, in a remote ancient city known as Bubastis. This derelict city was one of the most populated in all of ancient Egypt, dating back to the Old Kingdom around 4,500 years ago. Bubastis was known as the birthplace of the cat goddess Bastet. This myth probably originates from local farmers along this fertile stretch who began to domesticate cats and keep them in their homes to help fend off rats and other vermin. This is, after all, one of the functions of Bastet. The Egyptians often saw the personality trait in certain animals and made them into gods to ensure that the qualities they valued could be harnessed. A cat fending off rats and snakes from the home was certainly something they wanted to harness. Much like the goddess Sekhmet, who could protect from poisons and bites, symbolized by the scorpion. However, the worship of the cat seems to rarely stem in the Old Kingdom from the lioness goddess Sekhmet. Sekhmet had several personality traits, and thus the calm side of Sekhmet was split off into the miniature version of the lioness, the cat. This shift of Sekhmet's calm side rarely appears to have been a practice more of farmers, commoners, and housewives, rather than royals and priests. In the Middle Kingdom, Pharaoh Amenemhat III had built a palace at Bubastis in around 1800 BC. This was probably because of the high concentration of women living in the city. This pharaoh had a penchant for his harem women. This could be the origin of the cat being associated with sexual acts. Known as wandering the marshes, seen in tombs shortly after Amenemhat built this palace. This scene from a nobleman's tomb illustrates this best. The man hunting on a boat, his wife beautifully dressed behind him, his daughter picking lotus flowers, and a cat on the boat with them, helping to catch the birds. From the New Kingdom, a grand temple was built at Bubastis. This temple was started by Amenhotep III, where he also inserted the Temple of Amun, rather than dedicate it to Bastet. Then around 1280 BC, Pharaoh Ramses II built the Temple of Bastet at Bubastis. The large temple contained many Ramesside attributes. However, this act of building the Bastet temple is probably more of a vanity project for Ramses. Building a cat temple for the people in the city of the Cat would make the inhabitants of one of the most populated delta cities rather like the pharaoh, whose origins came from a delta city of non-royal descent. Ramses probably didn't worship the cat in the form of Bastet much. Even if he didn't need Bastet, she was still a goddess of a larger common folk, and being a goddess, he still had to venerate her as part of the plethora of gods. Ramses wanted to be seen with as many gods as possible. In fact, there is only one known scene of a pharaoh worshipping Bastet, and it comes from Bubastis.
The reason why you see me climbing up this rock is because we have this image of the cat goddess Bastet. It was originally up here, someone's pushed it down, probably the Christians when they came to destroy this temple. But here is the cat goddess Bastet, shown with Ramses II giving her an offering of what looks like to be bread in a bread mold. But because this is the cat goddess, maybe he should have been giving her an offering of milk. So, at least I can see Bastet from this angle. We have found Bastet again. On this column, on the other side, we can see her name written, Bastet. But here, we can see the beautiful cat goddess shown seated on a throne.
It was known as one of the most beautiful temples in Egypt, probably because Ramses had input on its construction from his daughter. Bubastis was, after all, a mainly feminine city. Therefore, he installed a giant statue of her. The great royal wife and daughter of Pharaoh Ramses II, Meret Amun, the woman that replaced Queen Nefertari when Nefertari died. She's standing here at the city where the cat was worshipped, Bubastis, and she's absolutely monumental. The back of the statue of Meret Amun has been altered. A pharaoh from the 22nd dynasty changed the royal name to suit his wife, Koromama. This pharaoh was Shoshank, who had set up a residence in Bubastis in 943 BC. Shoshank's son did not stay in Bubastis long when he came to the throne. However, he would have grown up here, which is why some incredible pieces of jewelry were found in his tomb, some pieces from his reign are clearly influenced by his time at Bubastis, with pendants showing the cat and other feline deities. In 450 BC, the city of Bastet intrigued the Greek historian Herodotus. He traveled to the city to experience the festival of the cat firsthand. He wrote that the temple was the most beautiful of all Egypt. Many boats arrived at the city, carrying men and women, mostly women though. The women sang and played instruments while lifting their dresses. The men played flutes. He estimated that 700,000 people descended upon the temple. Herodotus also states that the most amount of wine was consumed at the festival at Bubastis than any other during the year. Shortly after the birth of Jesus, during the Holy Family's flee into the safety of Egypt, their first place of rest was in fact Bubastis. When the child Jesus, Mary and Joseph arrived in Bubastis, they asked the locals for sustenance and shelter. Being preoccupied with the preparations for the Bastet festival the following day, they refused. The child Jesus blessed the land, and a water spring emerged from the ground. Jesus said that all who drink from the well shall be forgiven. One local woman heard this. She drank from the water and her legs were healed. This farmer's wife offered them refuge. The next day, the Holy Family accompanied the farmer and his wife to the festival. Jesus entered the temple, and the cat statue fell to the ground, fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah. Bubastis was a large city, and what we see today is only 1/8 of what it once was. The temple's inner sanctuary plinth is still partly intact, and would have once supported a small golden statue of Bastet, similar to remaining ones found around the site. She was shown as a woman with the head of a cat. She wears a fully covered dress and a very large collar necklace. In one hand, she holds the sistrum with the face of Hathor and a kitten inside. On the other, she holds the standard of herself with the face of a cat and the crown of the sun disk, connecting her to her father Ra.
This is the altar where a statue of Bastet would stand and the people would come to worship her. The high priestess would come to worship her right here. But Bubastis is actually a much larger site. This is a map of when the site was first excavated. We can see we are here in the temple. Right over there is the mud brick fort. We have the pottery. As we go down, we have the causeway going straight across here, leading to the statue of Meret Amun. And around this temple, all the way around, are mud brick houses where priests and locals lived. Bastet was the local goddess of this region. This site where Mary and Jesus came and rested has now been completely destroyed. It's very sad, actually, that a place that gave refuge to the Holy Family was then written about in the Bible and mentioned as Bubastis, where it says that this city will be brought to the ground for its pagan worship. Well, standing here at the city of the cat, it is completely to the ground.
During the Christian Crusades in 1154, the soldiers sought out to fulfill this prophecy. They entered Bubastis and tore the ancient city and temple down. So we can say that the pharaohs didn't worship the cat as people assume today. But what of the common people? What evidence can we find of their devotion to Bastet? It is true to say that dogs were not worshipped in the same way as cats were. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, was from the Canid family after all. Dogs were more than often kept as pets. Pet cats were never given names the way that we do today. All cats were referred to by their ancient Egyptian name, meow, after the sound they make, possibly because of their connection to Bastet and Sekhmet. Dogs were another story though. At Saqqara, we can see why.
Into the tomb of Mehu. As I've said many times before, cats were not the majority of domestic animal. The majority that people had were dogs, and dogs were given names where cats were not.
As on this 12th dynasty coffin, the owner is seen with his dog, and his dog's pet name is written alongside. At Saqqara, there are many scenes that show everyday life with the Egyptian countryside. Amongst the reeds and birds lurks a cat waiting for its prey. The Egyptians were experts at observing everyday details that we take for granted today. Many of these everyday examples can be found further south in Luxor. The village of Deir el-Medina. This was a secretive, yet active settlement set up by the pharaohs from the 18th dynasty onwards to house the men who built the elaborate royal tombs. Deir el-Medina was a thriving hub and gives us an unprecedented insight into domestic life. Often men would go away for 10 days at a time to work on the royal tombs, leaving the women and children at the village. The woman would keep pet cats to help keep rats and snakes away, which is why Bastet was seen as a goddess to help keep domestic bliss, and a protector of women, much like modern women in Egypt do today.
Oh, it looks amazing.
In tombs of these men and women at the village, they sometimes showed their pets, from dogs, monkeys, geese, and of course, cats. However, the cats were always shown under the chair of the lady of the house. The men of Deir el-Medina often drew little sketches on spare pieces of flat stone called ostraca. They practiced drawing cats. This piece shows a cat with a bearded foreign man behind. Sometimes they depicted local folk tales lost to time, showing satirical fable-style scenes of mice and cats performing duties of pharaohs and priests. Some papyri survive of these fables, but most of the text is missing, leaving us in the dark about these specific ancient fairy tales. There is, however, another cat goddess from this area of Egypt. Different to Bastet in the Delta, Pakhet was a more ferocious form of cat. Again associated with the lioness Sekhmet, she had a temple at El Minya, built by the female pharaoh Hatshepsut in 1480 BC. Pakhet looks different from the usual form of domestic cat. She is shown in some of the noble tombs at Beni Hassan, and back at Deir el-Medina, the workers there included Pakhet in their tombs. A pet Pakhet is usually shown with a lead and a collar, as this cat was very dangerous. So dangerous that she became a protector in the afterlife and is shown in their papyri and tombs killing a demon snake with a dagger. This cat has strange long ears. Pakhet is in fact a caracal, one of the most fierce small felines. At the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, a later dynasty pharaoh named Nectanebo is actually shown in the company of Pakhet, in a form of a woman with a caracal head. Yet on this piece, there is a woman nursing a child in front of two Hathor pillars, and by the pillars sit two Bastet cats. This could symbolize Bubastis. A few hours north of Bubastis, in ancient Tanis, this site even more in ruin than Bubastis, it contains an obscure 21st dynasty pharaoh's tomb from 1047 BC. The tomb was shared with Pharaoh Sheshonq and belonged to Pharaoh Susanes.
That's better. You get
Keep it right
the
there,
shadow. Yeah.
Okay. I'll fix it in post.
In the tomb, we can see Susanes before the goddess, the cat goddess, Pakhet. In Luxor, at the royal tombs built by the men from Deir al-Medina, such as this tomb built for the son of Ramses III, we find examples of more ferocious feline deities. A male lion guardian, and on another wall is a cat with the name spelled out, Meow. She guards Gate 12 of the underworld. In the tomb of Nefertari is a ferocious guardian in the form of a lioness wielding a knife with two snakes on her head. In the tomb of Pharaoh Siptah, however, is a smaller form of feline. She is shown as Meow, protecting a gate. Cats and particularly large felines were connected to the god Ra and Sekhmet, like the ferocious Pakhet. Bastet, however, did have a son. Her mythological child was known as the male lion god of war, a god that Ramses II revered and named his pet lion after. Further south, along Lake Nasser at a temple named Der built by Ramses II, we can see that he gave his pet lion an actual name, unlike commoners who only named their cat Meow. Ramses II in battle, smiting his enemies before Amun. But here is Ramses' pet lion. This is Ma-Hes, the pet lion that's depicted at Bait al-Wali and Abu Simbel, and here at Der. This lion was trained by the Nubians and brought to Ramses as a gift. We can see Ma-Hes's name written here at the top with the determinative of a lion. Ramses gave this lion an identity, and the name means the one who is beside him. This lion shone beside the great pharaoh. The cult of the cat had spread into Greece and into Italy, arriving in Pompeii. Some of the frescoes from this ancient site that are so well preserved after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius show priests, particularly Egyptian priests, performing ceremonies. These priests are holding sistrums, and behind them we can even see cats lurking about. Some sistra and statues of cats were found at the Temple of Isis in Pompeii and are now on display in the museum in Naples. We do know of two examples of pet cats from minor royal tombs. The uncle of Tutankhamun had his pet cat buried with him and placed into its own stone sarcophagus. The side of this artifact shows the clear glyph spelling out the cat's general name, meow. The larger felines were more closely associated with the royals. At Saqqara, in the tomb of Maya, the wet nurse of Tutankhamun, a mummified lion was discovered, again showing that royals were more connected to the larger felines.
Let's get under cover. It's raining. Get under cover.
Also in the Cairo Museum are the treasures from Tuya and Yuya. They have an exquisite golden chair of Princess Sit Amun, with a pet cat sitting under the chair of Queen T. Queen T was one of the strongest queens in ancient Egypt. She was married to Pharaoh Amenhotep III in 1390 BC. She was often shown in a feline sphinx form and became associated with the lioness goddess Mut. In Luxor, within the largest temple complex in the world, at Karnak, Amenhotep III built this temple and dedicated it to the wife of the all-powerful god, Amun. Her name was Mut. Amenhotep III, shown here in the temple of Mut. Amun on earth, Queen T would be Mut on earth, and this temple here was constructed and begun by the great pharaoh Amenhotep III. She was generally appearing as a woman, but in some instances she was connected to the lioness Sekhmet. The temple of Mut features the most amount of statues of the goddess Sekhmet, the lioness goddess. The reason for this is that one of the forms of the goddess Mut was a lioness. You see, the ferocious side of the lioness was Sekhmet, but to appease Sekhmet, they would feed her beer dyed red with ochre, so that she would think it was blood. Once Sekhmet had drank the blood, she became calm, the mother figure, which is Mut. So it makes sense to have the two sides of the lioness worshipped in this temple. The festival of Sekhmet here at the Mut temple is strikingly similar to the Bastet festival that took place in Bubastis. Sekhmet shown here, holding a papyrus or a lotus plant, and the Ankh, the key of life, with the crown of Mut, with the several cobras all around. This was a temple started by Amenhotep III. This was a statue made by Amenhotep III. Yet on the side is the name of a Libyan named Sheshank. Sheshank, who as we know had a residence at Bubastis, wrote about his many accomplishments at Karnak. On one wall, he writes about how he defended Egypt from Judah, and in particular, defended Bubastis. He lists 156 regions that he defeated. Many of these conquests of Sheshank are also written about in the Bible. Just adjacent, from the columns of Taharqa, here we have another pharaoh of non-Egyptian birth. This is Sheshank, a Libyan pharaoh from the 22nd dynasty, ruling the Delta. This pylon is clearly an extension. We can see the wall here, built by Sheshank, yet next to him, at a vertical line, we can see that this would have been the end of a pylon, extended out, made much grander, and you can even see the god Montu cut off from the wall of Sheshank that has clearly not even been finished, because the priests had other plans. Although by the time of Sheshank, Egypt was divided, with priests ruling in Thebes, while foreign Libyan descendants such as Sheshonq ruled in the delta. The divide started back at the time of Ramses IX. There are some scenes at Karnak which reveal what was going on. We see the pharaoh over here with a priest, the priest being adorned with gold, a similar scene that we see on Lake Nasser in the tomb of Penaut, with lower-level priests giving thanks to the high priest. This is a very telling scene because the pharaoh is shown here on the same scale as the priest. They've put the pharaoh on a little platform to just raise him that little bit extra so the pharaoh would not notice immediately this is a cover-up. But on this wall, they have made pharaoh and high priest the exact same scale. The hands are touching on the same level. They are here indeed equals. And this is where we start to see the priests take a higher interest in politics. The priests start to take back their own. With Ramses IX now ruling the Delta, Herihor, a high priest, ruled over Thebes. The priests took up control. This also trickled down into Bubastis. Around 747 BC, priests in Bubastis and Saqqara were selling cat mummies to general pilgrims to be offered to Bastet for protection and a peaceful domestic life. There have been thousands, if not millions, of cat mummies discovered in Saqqara and Bubastis. Some quite simple, and some very well wrapped and even decorated with their facial features painted on. In museums all around the world, you can find cat mummies. In Bologna in Italy, some cat mummies are even placed into large cat-shaped coffins with glass inlaid eyes, as well as the magical and spiritual instruments known as sistrums. These were actually used at Bubastis during the festival days. Many of these feature small cat figurines around the instrument. In France at the Louvre, many cat statues can be found from the late period. These show cats in various moments, like playing with their young. What's really interesting here is this is a statue of the goddess Bastet, protecting her baby kittens. She has the body of a cat and the head of a young woman. It is so beautiful, so interesting that she's depicted like this. In Cairo, there are so many cat statues on display in various poses. All of the cat statues were found at Saqqara and Bubastis, in homes and tombs. There is a private home, now a museum, that belonged to an Irishman, containing a piece of the cat's history from ancient Egypt, discovered in the late 1800s.
The famous Geir Anderson cat of Bastet. It is just absolutely beautiful to see this cat decorated with the ears, having the feather of Ma'at inside, the eye of Horus, Khepri scarab, and the Khepri scarab on the forehead. A beautiful representation of Bastet.
Because Bubastis was such a populated city, there have been many artifacts discovered in the homes and surrounding tombs, so much so that there is a museum on site to display the finds. From coins showing Alexander the Great, terracotta statues of Alexander, Aphrodite, and even a camel, statues of Pharaoh Zamtik, who showed himself in the presence of Pakhet, biblical artifacts showing its Christian connection. High-quality Egyptian jewelry. And it goes without saying, many, many cat amulets and statues. The priests were making big money on the cat cult in Bubastis, but something was not right. By the time that the Greeks were in Egypt, around 300 BC, the priests who were selling these cat mummies were being evasive with the truth about their cat mummy sales, oblivious to the general public.
I've come to meet up with a very special lady, a very dear friend of mine, who is an expert on animal mummies. Salima.
Curtis,
Hello.
sweetie. Hello. How are you?
I'm good. Are you enjoying the football?
I am actually. It's
Are you ready?
fascinating.
Are you ready for some questions?
I am.
Salima, I am investigating the worship of cats in ancient Egypt. And I know you are a big cat lover, especially of the mummified variety.
Dead cats at best.
You know, I've noticed that there's a lot of mummified cats being offered to Bastet. Now, are you of the opinion that the priests were deliberately diddling the cat mummies with not putting complete cats inside, or what was the reason for that?
So we have things that we call amalgam or false mummies, because with whether they're ibises or cats or what have you, or raptors, sometimes there's a bit
Yes.
of a cat in it.
For the essence?
No.
No.
You asked the question, I'll answer it.
Okay.
So, first, one thing is they were diddling the punters. Second thing is that a part represents the whole in ancient Egypt, and if you say the words, then it magically becomes a cat inside. And then the third thing is that if you've mummified things, and I have done experimental work with animals with my students, bits fall off.
Yes.
They're sacred, and you might think, oh, bloody hell, the cat's already been mummified without that bit, but we will gather together all these parts and make another mummy out of it because it's sacred, because it's been transformed.
Yes.
And so those are the three main reasons why we think this might have happened.
Okay, so there was no wastage.
No,
wastage.
waste not, want not.
Exactly.
Very Victorian.
But with the cat worship, what do you think is some of the biggest misconceptions that the modern public has about cat worship in ancient Egypt?
I think modern people think that the ancient Egyptians worshipped all cats, which is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
They liked them, but they worshipped the ones that were supposed to be sacred.
Yes.
So the idea was that, you're a cat,
Okay.
and
Meow.
you are meow, and the special markings set you apart from other cats. So the priests feel that the spirit of the goddess Bastet has entered you.
Okay.
Then during your lifetime, you were worshipped, you were made much of, and it was lovely.
Yes.
You died, you were beautifully mummified. The spirit would migrate into the body of another cat. And it's very much like the Dalai Lama,
Yes.
where you have one Lama spirit going through millennia.
And it transcends into the next.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh wow, that is quite incredible.
Yeah.
Why do you? I've noticed we don't really see a pharaoh worshipping a cat. Why
We see him
is
worshipping
that?
bulls mainly.
Yes. Or Sekhmet, or
Well, no, Sekhmet, Sekhmet had cats being
Yeah.
offered to her,
Yeah.
as did Bastet.
She did.
But I mean,
Okay.
it's depends on where you are. The Bubastis obviously is for cats.
Yes.
But you have to remember the late period of Egyptian history and religion. A lot of these goddesses and gods fused together. So you have different manifestations of Sekhmet and Bastet and Mut, all being shown as a cat or a lioness, something feline.
Yes. And with the worship of these cats, were cat mummies offered to Bastet, or were those given to the people to then go and offer? What was the process there?
A good question. We think, this is our hypothesis, this is our model, is that, okay, you want to be lucky in love.
Okay.
Or music. And you think, I am going to the temple of Bastet.
Yeah.
Instead of offering her a statue or a stela, which is inanimate. You will do something that is far more dramatic. You will make a blood sacrifice. And so you will offer an animal that is associated with that deity to the deity.
Yes.
And sometimes these animals were actually killed.
Yeah, like
the
totally.
neck was wrung, or they were bashed in the head.
Because there's that image of Akhenaten breaking the neck of a goose.
Which is, they were
And
all food offerings.
That was just a food offering,
Yeah, normal.
Yeah.
But then a blood sacrifice counts.
Yeah.
You have it in the modern monotheistic religions as well.
Exactly. Drinking the blood of Christ,
it counts for more. Christianity is the most extreme. When they actually they killed the Son of God.
Yes.
Whereas at least in Judaism and Islam, they put a ram instead of the child.
Okay, yeah. A symbol.
Yes.
Yeah. So these cat mummies are symbols.
Well, they're symbols, but they are sort of, and they also act as intercessors.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the Egyptians believed that animals they had magic, powers.
Yeah.
They could speak the language of the gods. So you had the gods' world, the humans' world, and animals were in the liminal space, and they could interact between the two.
Okay. Well, that is really, really fascinating. Thank you for just, giving me a little bit more info in my investigation about this, because I see so many of these people online, they think cats were the be-all and end-all in ancient Egypt. That's totally not true.
No, but they were admired because they're beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
And even now in Egypt, actually, cats are very popular, and you'll find people just in the streets feeding cats left, right, and center.
Yeah. Well, but love hasn't died.
Nope.
At Saqqara, a later cat cult center is yielding more answers. Just a few hundred meters away from the Djoser Pyramid lies the Bubastis. In recent years, archaeologists have discovered thousands of cat mummies here.
Today we are announcing the beginning of a new discovery in the mountain cliff in an area called Bubastis, where the French worked here for more than 30 years. And then they stopped working, and now the Supreme Council of Antiquity resumed its work in the western side from the site where the French worked. They were able to uncover 3 small tombs of the New Kingdom and 4 small tombs of the Old Kingdom. And they found hundreds of objects, mummified cats, mummified scarabs, mummified crocodile.
These mummified cats and animals are bringing us closer out of the dark. It appears that during the Roman period, the cat craze began to fade away. The worship of cats, in particular Bastet, seems to have reached its pinnacle around 300 AD. What this journey has taught me is something I always wanted to clear up: the fact that the pharaohs and royals in general did not worship the cat goddess Bastet. It was not the craze that people today make it out to be. Bastet was, however, a big deal for the everyday people. She was so much more than a goddess or a pet. For these working men, and particularly women, Bastet was a symbol of the perfect being, calm and serene, but weary of danger. She was a sign of how we know cats to conduct themselves: independence. With pharaohs and priests controlling so much of daily life, I think they saw Bastet as the icon of self-reliance, something maybe the people of Egypt were yearning for. Bastet was the people's goddess.